apparently, I mean, sometimes when we take tourists around Cambridge and the joke with Jesus is, they have Jesus College named after its founder.
Okay, well,
Actually, the founder is John
And then
so yeah, welcome everybody to the first debate of Cambridge Romanian Society. Today we've got as a special sort of like invitees here the Bulgarian Society will take part in the debate. One member pro and one member against. The debate is this House supports progressive tax. And to start off, I'd invite Cosmin to take point on the pro argument. That's 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Leo. Yeah, so my point is obviously that supporting progressive tax. And so I want to make a distinction between progressive income tax and progressive wealth tax, which I think that you are clearly distinct mechanics, but they are related, and I think they can both be used to a certain extent to reduce inequality. I'd like to start by saying essentially about the inequality levels in the world, and that currently the trend seems to be that inequality both between the lowest and the highest incomes and between the lowest and the highest amount of wealth, so capital, is increasing steadily, and has been doing that in the Western world for the last 30 years or so. For example, in America, if we look at the incomes, the share of top 10% incomes of the total amount was around 37% in 1950, so after the Second World War, and it's been increasing to about 50% now, and it's a bit less in Europe, but the trend seems to be similar. And if anything, America is a sign of things that are to come in Europe in the following decades. Wealth inequality is similar in India, somewhat similar, in that it's increased as well, but numbers are completely different. The share of top 10% wealth is about 73% in America and about 63% in Europe. So 73% as opposed to 50% for the incomes. So there's a clear discrepancy between wealth and income. The concentration of wealth is always higher than the concentration of income. Obviously, there are various reasons for that. The main reason why I mentioned that is because I think you can't have just progressive tax for income without having progressive wealth tax. It's I'm sure some of the members here are familiar with this name. Some others. Thomas Piketty is quite a well-known French economist who has been labelled by many to be in pole position for this year's Nobel Prize in Economics. And he wrote a book last year. He wrote a book called Capital in the 21st Century, which essentially can be summed up in one of his, in one line by himself. The inequality R greater than G, where R is the rate of return capital, and G is the GDP growth in the economy. And essentially what this means is that over time, the rate of return of capital tends to always be greater than the increase in the economy's GDP. So basically that means that the wealth owners, so whoever has more capital, whether that's shares, houses, accounts, all sorts of assets, basically means that the rate of return over time is going to tend to be higher than the increase in wages, which can be related to the increase in economy, to the increase in GDP. And essentially, if, let's say, for example, the rate of return is about 5%, which is a historically accurate number, and GDP growth is about 1%, which is the case in the last 7 or 8 years or so in Europe. That means that obviously whoever has the the wealth earners only need to reinvest a quarter of the wealth, well, a fifth of the wealth, in order to match the increase in poverty, and if you just have the rest. And progressive wealth tax, in my opinion, would reduce this inequality by reducing the real rate of increase in capital, the rate of return of capital, and consequently reduce the inequality. Another point I want to make about the wealth tax is that it can be seen as a fair measure. One of the primary purposes of government are to protect property rights of property owners and wealth owners. Obviously, the more wealth you have, the more the state is doing for you by protecting the right. And at the same time, you should pay more for that privilege. So in a way, it's fairer to pay more if you are a great wealth owner. Now, those are all the points about wealth tax. I'm sure I'll talk about it later after people keep asking questions. The other thing I want to talk about was progressive income tax, which is a completely different matter. And progressive income tax is employed in most countries around the world currently, multiple but economists are generally divided whether it's a good thing or not. In my opinion, some of the consequences of progressive income tax are perhaps most importantly less pressure on the poor and the middle class. And less pressure meaning they with progressive income tax or more progressive income tax, they'll end up with more money in their pocket at the end of the month. That means you could spend more. And spending encourages GDP growth, as the good example is the German economy in 2014, which increased more than most economists predicted because consumer spending increased and stimulated. And another point I'd like to make about income tax, and with this I'm gonna end for now, is that reduce the incentive for companies to pay ridiculous amounts of money to top managers, for example, but not only. For example, someone that gets paid 10 million euros a year isn't really 10 times more productive than if you were paid 1 million euros a year. And by having progressive income tax, there is less incentive for that to happen, for this ridiculous amount of money we just use around big wages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we should go now from the leader of the opposition, Sylvia.
Thank you. Yes, so we will approach the matter in two main ways. First, we'll see what effect progressive taxation would actually have upon the economy, and then we'll touch a bit on whether progressive taxation is actually something that is more fair, whether it's really something that this type of risk is really something that we need to try to work. So the issue of inequality in the world, as the proposition correctly stated, is indeed a dire one. But it is not something that we consider would be necessarily solved by progressive taxation. And let's see that by going through what effects this would have on the various levels of society in terms of income. So first of all, the impact it would have on the poor would, in theory, be a positive one. In theory, these people would have to pay less as they would be in some sense subsidized by the upper class. But as we'll see there, this is not necessarily the case. The middle class, the normal middle class, would perhaps we consider not suffer much change. They are in the middle of the income levels, so not much change there. But where the real issue appears is in the upper middle class. The people who start being affected by progressive taxation, but these are the people who contribute to small businesses. These people would have less cash flow, less disposable income to actually spend on investing in these companies which form really the backbone of a capitalist economy. It is not necessarily the big corporations that contribute the most, but these small business owners who hire people. For instance, in the US, perhaps one of the best examples of small business owners supporting the economy. You have the people hiring, you have them supporting the healthcare of their employees. You cannot hurt these people without affecting the economy in drastic ways. And these would be the people who are mostly affected by progressive income tax. Because as we move on to the rich, we see that in reality, they would not be impacted by this as much as we're going to progressive income tax. But even without progressive income tax, very many people in the upper stratums use tax loopholes. They attempt to hide away their wealth in offshore bank accounts. They even leave their countries. For companies, very well known example is Ireland, where so many US companies have their headquarters. For people, the very best example would have be Switzerland, where they all store their wealth. Increasing the pressure that these people feel upon their own wealth would only give them an additional incentive to seek loopholes, to hide away their income. So in the long term, this would result in less of an actual income into the state offers through taxation. And again, even among the rich, reducing the amount of cash that they have, because that is what progressive taxation does. They still keep their properties, but the amount of income, of actual money that they have is reduced. This would mean that they can invest even less than before into the economy. And moving on to another question, is this actually fair? Is it fair to take more money from people, more money proportionally from people who actually do more work, some would say, or maybe from people who, for some reason, have more money? Everyone is equal under the law. Why would everyone not be equal under taxation? Everyone is equal in terms of representation in theory, in parliaments around the world. Why do some people who have the same amount of representation, who have the same amount of say in the law of the country, have to contribute more? And there is a very big problem in beginning to implement progressive taxation in places like Bulgaria, like Romania, where there is not much of a tradition, not much of an established mentality for capitalism. And we may want to take a site, for instance, a village in Romania called Binjen, where a company recently built a factory nearby, and they invited the villagers to come and work there, people who are currently on benefits. And these people refused. These people are used to a system in which wealth is reshuffled, and in which income comes back to them. They do not necessarily have to work to earn their keep. Now, of course, we're not claiming that people should be allowed to starve, but having a slight incentive, a slight push to work is the very basic capitalist economy. And you cannot attack that, especially in a growing economy, an economy that is just starting on this path, without threatening its future. That is all that I have to say now. This is there.
Moving on to the second speaker for the promotion, Dan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much to the opposing team for their arguments. I would like to start by saying that I firmly believe that progressive tax is a tool, is a good tool to use by the government to create a more socially cohesive society and a more just society. And let me offer you three arguments for that. First of all, I'd like to further my partner's argument that progressive income tax specifically guarantees some base level of guaranteed income for the people who earn the least amount of money. These people are living paycheck to paycheck and they need to have some amount of money used for rent and for basic needs, which is guaranteed to them. On the other hand, people in the higher income brackets already have these services available to them, and this creates an opportunity to give back to the poor people and to their state in the form of taxes some of their income. And if before you say that this might be unfair, it might hinder the sense of achievement in society. Let me remind you that people in the higher income brackets actually they have benefited a lot from their state in attaining this income. People who run companies use the infrastructure of the country. They have benefited from investment incentives. They have benefited from the government in protecting their property through copyright laws, through protecting them in terms of policing, and they need to give something back. In fact, Warren Buffett, who is a very famous investor, he has stated that he wouldn't have been able to achieve what he has at the moment if it wasn't for the state of America to help him in protecting his company. And further, I believe that actually progressive tax creates a more fair society, a society where people from the lower income brackets feel encouraged to work harder and to actually move into a higher income bracket. In this sense, progressive income tax encourages economic mobility in a society. And not to forget, actually, progressive tax also can serve as an economic buffer in times of crisis or in times of war. Actually, the first time when a progressive tax was introduced in the UK was to remedy the consequences of the Crimean War. Is that correct? Okay, yes. And furthermore, income tax helps people in the lower income brackets to feel more just, and this encourages them to work harder in turn creating more value for the state. I would like to address some of the points which you made in your argument. You said that progressive tax is bad for people in the upper middle class who feel unfair because they have to pay more taxes to the government. Well, first of all, they have certainly benefited from the state in achieving this income. Therefore, they definitely owe something to the back to their country. And if they want to attain the same level of income, they could certainly find ways to expanding to achieve this. In terms of finding loopholes, this is certainly correct for more complicated progressive tax systems. But this could, for example, New Zealand is praised for its progressive income tax system, which actually taxes your salary before receiving it instead of having to file taxes every year. So this is one model where progressive tax certainly works. In terms of the argument that people would leave the country simply because their taxes are too high, I would like to emphasize that taxes and income are not the only metric by which you judge an individual or a country. And if a country wants to prevent brain drain, it has a lot of other incentives it could offer its citizens besides tax to achieve this. In conclusion, I would like to say that I believe that progressive income tax does help society in terms of economic turmoil, and it's certainly a measure which should be exploited to achieve better future. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure enough.
I prefer standing if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
So,
We might get to click off at
I think, yeah, maybe the head is not that important.
Yeah.
Speech is matters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to first of all thank Romanian Society for organizing this great occasion and for inviting us to join. And I hope that we'll get plenty of other things to bring together. And also address the arguments of today's debate. Ladies and gentlemen, this debate today is about two things. It's about the values that we want to set society to live in, but it is also about the practicality and the practical implications that those values have on our lives every day. In my speech, I'm going to show you that progressive taxation is being set as a value to address inequality, but it gets transpired in the speeches and from the reality of the past 50 years that it is felt completely in practicality to achieve this objective. I'd like to start first of all with the statistics that the leader of the government proposed to start with. He said that inequality has risen from 30% to 50% over the past 50 years since the Second World War. And yet, this is the time of history where we've seen the greatest increase in progressive taxation all across the world. So the more we see progressive taxation, the more the inequality increases in people. And I'm going to demonstrate to you why this is the case. And first of all, let us talk about the practical implications, and then let us talk about the values we'd like to set in our society. The reality of progressive taxation is that this mostly is reflected in income tax. Corporation tax, VAT, council tax, and with the exception of standard loan tax in this country, are all not subject to the same amount of progressive taxation that occurs in income tax. And yet the people who pay income tax, which is one of the simplest taxes to correct, and yeah, thank you for quoting the example of New Zealand, that's also the example of England. All taxes are collected at the source rather than refunded. So the reality is that it is not a matter of collection of the income tax, it is the most collectible tax in many ways. The reality is that what happens is the middle classes, the working classes, are the people who bear the burden of it. Warren Buffett, another great example that you pointed out, paid 18% tax last year. Warren Buffett's employees paid an average of 30% of tax last year. So the reality is that the wealthiest people in society, so the wealthiest 1%, who owe more than the poorest 99% of society, are those who benefit from those loopholes. Because the way their income is taxed, it's not through income tax, it's taxed through dividends and the profits that they retain, through the corporations they own in various offshore jurisdictions, and they benefit from the economies of scale that allow them to export capital in different jurisdictions and to even control how the governments treat that capital. Because the vastness of the capital is so great that even co-governments or even co-economies have to accommodate this inflow of capital. Now, it is a great value to be able to live in an equal society where you have control over everybody. The reality is that the world is comprised of almost 200 countries, each of them with different taxation systems. And you cannot entrap capital in any one of those systems. So the only people whose capital you can entrap are the middle classes, who you tax with income tax. Therefore, they are taxed in the country where they work. However, the wealthiest members of society are able to export all of their earnings in different jurisdictions where they can find tax accommodation or tax havens, and that is what they do. So income tax, so progressive taxation has helped to address this inequality. On the contrary, it has increased it. Let me give you two case studies. One, the United Kingdom, a developed economy where this is failed, and two, Romania and Bulgaria, not developed economies where this is also failed, where progressive taxation will also fail. In the United Kingdom, 40% income tax starts from £32,000 a year. 50% income tax starts from £150,000 a year, up to without a limit. The reality is that if you earn £150,000 a year, you're nowhere near the upper middle class in this country. The reality for upper middle class is at least £1 million cannot buy a property in London without much money. And the wealthiest people in the United Kingdom, those who are spending tens or hundreds of millions of pounds, including £160 million the most expensive flat ever sold in 1.5 in London, those people are the ones who benefit from the system, whereas the middle classes are the ones who bear the burden. And not only that, but there is a bitterness and resentment on the part of the middle classes that they are working incredibly hard to achieve the money that they are achieving, but at the same time are supporting a lot of the population that basically does nothing and is on benefits and comes here, refuses to work, and is being provided with social benefits to raise children, to not do anything. And this embitterment between the middle classes and the not working classes at all is very great. It's creating an externality for an unequal society and for an uncohesive society. In Bulgaria and Romania, again, we have two countries where there is no progressive taxation. And that is crucial for any chance of these countries to survive in the battle of brain drain. Because as soon as you tell somebody, tell a young youth that, or a banker or a lawyer or anybody, if they're going to be taxed 50% in Bucharest as they will be taxed in London, the choice is simple. Let's go to London, especially when the salaries are going to be much lower in Bucharest and in Sofia. So the only way of addressing this issue is by keeping the taxes low, so you have at least a few people staying in these countries and benefiting from that. Let me move on to the second name of this debate, which is the value that works into our society. And the proposition team has spoken at length that social equality and is the criteria of social welfare is a criteria we discussed today, and that is far from established truth. We have from the past 50 years, in the past 50 years, fought for a welfare state after the Second World War, but that is not necessarily the only way to go forward. Laissez-faire capitalism is also an alternative, especially given the fact that, or even the third way, which is going to the left, where you set the limit as to the amount of people who can have. So what you can do instead of giving progressive taxation is simply set a limit of 100 million pounds of ownership. Everything else then goes to society. And I'd like to reiterate the fact that we're not fighting against tax per se, and we don't believe that you should not be able to do something for your country. Yes, you do, and yes, you can contribute, and yes, there are things that need to be provided, care needs to be provided. What we're arguing against is that it needs to be provided through progressive taxation, because there are other alternatives which may work, and progressive taxation doesn't. So this House does not believe in progressive taxation, because progressive taxation has failed. Thank you.
After this round of introductory arguments from both teams, I think we would like some time to let teams question each other on their respective arguments, starting with the motion.
Yes. Well, I would like to have a question for the team, and that is essentially what exactly what are the kinds of people they describe as upper middle class?
Well, of course, that would depend. That would depend on the. It was not Roman's problem. Anyway, hopefully we'll take that as that. Never mind. Well, it depends on the country that you work from, but I think the definition of middle class is a class that is not working. So the difference between working class and middle class is with middle class, probably talk about people with further education or in some sort of professional services provided where such as banking, lawyers, professionals in corporations, high academics, upper levels of sort of tech departments, people who are working to support their well-being, but are not on the sort of base salary or without education. In contrast, probably the wealthiest classes are those who do not work to the well-being, profit from who support themselves through investment or through managing corporations or through entrepreneurship, and therefore they will be taxed in different ways, such as corporation tax, dividend tax, etc. That's how I would find it. But of course, there's a start.
Yes, so that's good. We're on the same page because I just wanted to make sure that I was thinking about the same upper middle class as you are. And yeah, I had the same thing in mind. And well, the opposition argued one of the first things they said was that, in their view, progressive income taxation would affect the poor classes by giving them more money. Wouldn't have much of an effect on the normal middle class that we got to praise. Would affect negatively the upper middle class. And what I'm saying is that, in my view at least, I don't see it this way. I see the way I see progressive taxation. It would have a positive impact in terms of money, let's say, on both the lower class, the poorer class, and what you call the normal middle class. I would say the class that it would have the least amount of impact would be the upper middle class. And as you said yourself, the wealthy, the high class, whatever you want to call it, are the ones that don't need to they don't live on their wages, so they don't pay income tax anyway. So there won't be any point in tax them on progressively. And I think it's also the wealthiest absolute top for billionaires. You count 20, $30 billion in assets, you have to, obviously, you're not going to have a working wage, you don't have a wage. There's no point to have the income tax. But that's why I said they should have a wealth tax. On the other hand, you have the class under them, which can't be described as upper middle class. For example, footballers. It's probably not the best example, but anyway, which they live on their wages essentially, which are absolutely astronomical. And the reason why they become so high is that there is no progressive income tax. You can pay, as I say, you can pay a footballer 1 million a year. You can pay him 10 million a year. As far as you're concerned, it doesn't make that much difference. You pay tax at the same rate. If you include this progressive tax, that will stop absolutely ridiculous wages and could redirect money somewhere else. Thank you.
Yeah, right. But the point that we're making with the upper middle class is that these people are, so we're referring to small business owners especially, the people who are right on the top between living from their paychecks, from their income, and beginning to use that income to invest in their community, in their businesses, and thereby directly contributing to the economy. And these people would be negatively affected because they are not yet rich enough, affluent enough to have enough lawyers and law experience to stash their wealth away, like the top 1%. But these people would, so these people would start to see a pretty significant drop in their actual cash flow. So there would be less money to directly reinvest back, not only for themselves, but for their economy, for their local economy, especially. That would be the point.
Thank you very much. Does the opposition have any questions?
Yes, well, position. Right, sorry, my bad.
Do we have questions?
Yeah.
So, what is, we live in capitalist society. What is the value of capitalism? What is the ultimate goal that we set in capitalist society?
Is that the question?
Yeah.
In my view, capitalism at its absolute, let's say, obviously there's no form of absolute capitalism anywhere in the world, there's no incentives and everything, but in my view, the nutshell that you can make as much money as you want, you can do whatever you want essentially, and you shouldn't, the government shouldn't intervene in your business. The government is just doing its stuff. It's got nothing to do with systems.
Right. Would you agree that in capitalist society, if you, the idea is that you work very hard, you succeed in your profession or entrepreneurship, you earn a lot of money, and you earn it in a decent way, and then you benefit from that money that you earn. Do you think that's an accurate description?
I agree very well, but progressive taxation won't cause someone that earns, if someone earns, say, X amount, with the same rate of taxation, if someone earns Y amount with the same system, and X is greater than Y, if you introduce progressive taxation, X will still be greater than Y, so if you work harder, it's still earn more money than someone who works less time.
But the idea that you said here is that you're effectively saying the inherent contradiction between progressive taxation and capitalism is that progressive taxation says actually you earn a lot of money, so you need to contribute to other people. Whereas capitalism says you earn a lot of money, well done.
I'm not saying I agree with everything capitalism says.
Sure, but where do you draw the line between given the societies that we live in? I fail to see how you can address both in your value model and in your capital model the idea how would you get this sort of wealth redistribution? And in particular, given that this is what capitalist society that's the dominant model of the economy across the world is governing. In particular, I'd like to ask you, how would you stop a footballer from leaving the United Kingdom where it impacts 90% and going to play Morocco where it impacts 0%?
Okay, so what I actually probably mentioned in the beginning of the start, what I was debating for was not whether it's good for the United Kingdom to have progressive income tax or whether it's good for Monaco to have a progressive income tax, but as opposed to the quantum rate tax. I was just arguing which one is better. And essentially what I'm saying is that if we have progressive global system of progressive tax, that wouldn't be the case. The effect of tax havens would be nowhere near as what is funded.
So how do you explain the rise in inequality over the past 50 years in this station towards rising?
Its correlation doesn't look like one.
So what is causing inequality? If it's not, it's
I don't know what caused inequality, but first, I'm not an economist. Secondly, I didn't research it, so I don't know all the things that have happened. For the past 50 years, there's lots of things have changed. Progressive taxation is one of them. It's not the only one.
So you see no position between progressive taxation and equality, and yet at the same time you want to say that with more progressive taxation there's going to be more equality. We say when we've already just agreed that there's no correlation between progressive taxation and inequality. So this, I mean, how do you reconcile?
No, what I said is that I don't believe progressive taxation has increased the inequality. Yeah, I don't believe progressive taxation has increased the inequality. I agree that inequality has increased in the past 50 years. Progressive taxation has happened in the past 50 years. But I don't believe one is the cause of another. And I think if we use more progressive taxation, both for income and for wealth, we might see a decrease in inequality.
Basically, you want to try more of the same but harder to achieve something that's already there.
I want to try more of the same. I did say I want income tax, progressive income tax, and progressive wealth tax.
So what is progressive wealth tax?
Progressive wealth tax is a different rate of taxation on increasing capital.
How does that work? Yeah, how do you tax? I mean, okay, you work on it. How do you tax it work?
I mean, if I may interject, I think governments around the world have been debating this issue of economics for the past 50 years, like you said. I don't think we're going to make any headway into the exact viable economic model in the next 5 minutes. We could sort of move on to this kind of like line of questioning of exactly what tax and how much you would make it. And maybe let the promotion team have address some questions to the opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask if progressive taxation is so bad and inefficient, why do almost all the Western countries implement their only? Brilliant.
To reiterate what another member of the proposition just said, correlation does not necessarily imply causation. The wealth of Western countries may be despite, not because of progressive taxation.
And just add to that, the Western countries are governed by the wealthiest population. It's on. So the reality is in the United States, America, Britain, the wealthiest countries are governed by the wealthiest people, by the big corporations who get control over the government institutions, the lobbying, with the big companies. I mean, even if you look at the conservative party now that's controlling the country, for Boris Johnson, David Cameron runs the government, they're all millionaires. Every single one of or I think almost every single one of them is of cabinet at the moment without two people. If you look at the American Senate, if you look at the American Congress, if you look at the White House, I mean, Honestly, the reason why there is diversification is because somebody's got to put the bill. And that the people who put the bill are the people who work, they're not the people who own money. And that's the hypocrisy that's within the Western system of diversification, because it's the working people who pay for the wealthiest people's control.
Okay, in that case, I have a further question. How in this without progressive taxation, how do we guarantee the base income necessary for maintaining the lowest standard of living for the lowest income bracket?
I don't necessarily see how the two are correlated. The state does pay benefits. We are not arguing against benefits here. And even if the state would have less of a net income, the well-being of the lowest and most threatened layer of society would still be a priority for government, and that would still be most certainly guaranteed always.
And practically, you've got flat rate taxes. You've got VAT, you've got countries with flat rate taxes. Additionally, you've got the possibility of going even more to the left. You can say the limit. Everybody wants anything more than 100 million. If you want to go that route.
The person.
Cannot, well, unlike Russia. I think exactly unlike Russia. Everybody who owns a vast amount of money will get to give that money to the government or contribute to charitable purposes or set foundations or get a third way of going. So you can say you can earn up to £50 million. You can keep all of that. Everything you own above £50 million, you have to find your own way of redistributing it for creating education scholarships, creating some
which is a progressive tax with 100% tax bracket.
It's a different system.